Mr. Gowdy for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. O'Carroll, I don't know if this is a memo or if this was a press release from FLIOA. I'm going to read part of it, and then that'll give us some context to have a conversation. Unfortunately, we have seen some in Congress act as if they were part of the media. I want to just stop right there and say of all the criticisms that members of Congress have gotten in the 6 years I've been here, that one hurts the most. Instead of introducing bills that could help our agency, they'd rather go for the 30-second soundbite that tarnishes the reputation of the agency and work ethic of its personnel. This is unfortunate, as we do have many allies in Congress and appreciate the work of the Secret Service, its personnel, and want to help, but they are overshadowed by the screaming minority who might not even be able to pass the test for our job. Now, I consider myself to be one of your allies, so I don't think you have a better friend in Congress than the former prosecutors. But I am wondering what members of Congress you were referring to that would rather pursue a 30-second soundbite than help the agency.
Well, Representative Gowdy, I guess first and foremost, that isn't my quote. It was a quote of a representative from the Secret Service who is a member of my association, and it came out on our letterhead. So yes, our concern on this thing is and we've been dealing with your committee, in fact with you, with the chairman, and expressing our concerns that this is a budget issue that needs to be going from the authorizers to the appropriators, and asking the appropriators to, to add the money that will help with the pay cap on this thing. And I got to admit, sir,
you just made your case without talking about any member of Congress who is more interested in a 30-second soundbite than they are helping the agency. You just did it, which makes me wonder why this memo didn't do it. Are there members in particular? I actually don't think I've ever been on television talking about the Secret Service, so I don't think you're talking about me. Who are you talking about?
In this case, as I said, Mr. Gowdy, I didn't write that one, so I'm not too sure specifically which member was being talked about. But it came out on
FLIOA letterhead.
Yes, sir.
Right?
Yep.
And I'm assuming you don't let people send things out on your letterhead that don't at least have some imprimatur of your support.
Well, Mr. Gowdy, what I can do on that one is I can go back to the author of it and find out which member he was speaking about specifically. But I got to tell you, this is a can that's been kicked down the road for years and years in terms of this overtime issue.
Right, I get that.
A lot to blame.
But because I am an ally, sometimes allies also need to offer some words of correction. That paragraph ended by saying, overshadowed by the screaming minority who might not even be able to pass the test for our job. Can you see how that might have gotten my attention, the way that would be phrased, might not be able to pass the test for our job? That's a curious line to put in a memo, isn't it?
Yes, sir.
Except it's not. You and I know exactly what that author was talking about, don't we?
I could guess at it, yes.
Guess.
It'd be some members of this committee.
Such as whom?
I have no idea.
How about the one whose personnel file was accessed? Could it be that one?
I would say that there hasn't been very good treatment of that application over the years, which is one of the reasons why we're here. And maybe that was a subliminal reference to it. I don't know.
Well, it's actually not subliminal. It could not be more clear. There's nothing subliminal about it. It just flat out says who could not pass our test for our job.
And it was a general statement on it, not specific, sir.
Well, Mr. O'Carroll, you can't run a license tag because you happen to think the driver is cute. You can't run an NCIC background check because your kids might be hanging out with some bad characters. And you can't access the personnel files of members of Congress that you happen to not like at that particular point. You would agree with me there, wouldn't you?
Reprehensible, and I agree with you.
All right, well, it's reprehensible. Mr. Inspector General, what happened to him?
My understanding is that there was discipline that was imposed by the department. I don't have those details because I was not involved in the discipline process.
Well, when you say discipline, give me the range of discipline that could be possible.
Well, I think the range of discipline could be anywhere from termination.
Was anybody terminated?
My understanding is no.
Was anybody given time off?
My understanding was yes.
With or without pay?
Given time off without pay that was not suspended. There was a number of individuals who were received time off, and that was suspended, but there were others who actually did get time off.
How pervasive was the breach?
Well, our report said that it was approximately 40-some people, only of which 3 had, or 4, I can't remember off the top of my head.
Is there any ambiguity on whether or not it's a good idea to access anyone, member of Congress or otherwise's application or personnel file to use for retributive purposes?
No.
Is there any ambiguity about whether or not that's a good idea?
It is not.
Can you let me know what discipline was meted out? There's no one in Congress that holds law enforcement in higher esteem than I do. No one. But we choose to go into that line of work, and the rules apply even to us. And I think accessing programs that the public does not have access to try to embarrass your critics, to use Mr. O'Carroll's word, is reprehensible. So I'd like to know what punishment was meted out.
Very well. Thank you.
With that, I would yield back.
Thank the gentleman. Well, I recognize
Sean, several topics. One,
Shocker.
don't be. You heard the question that I lobbed at the Attorney General about the hate crime that happened in New York. The white supremacist who went to New York and targeted a black man. Hate crimes are on the rise. What do you say? What is this White House saying about this obvious, apparent hate crime?
I'm not gonna. I mean, you yelled at the Attorney General a specific case, if I'm not correct.
In the past to talk about this, and you've talked about issues of
Right,
hate crimes.
and I'm glad to talk about the issue. I just want to be very clear
Uh-huh.
that I am not going to reference any specific case before the DOJ right now. I will say that the President has recognized that we need to bring the country together. He wants to unite this country. He wants to bring people together. He had a very long conversation with respect to race in itself, which I think is somewhat, if I'm not correct in your question. There, okay, I just want to be clear. Thank you. And I think that was one of the topics that he talked about with the CBC. Some of the issues with respect to crime and education and some of the solutions that they suggested that could be done during their meeting. And I think those are the kind of things that I think we can continue that conversation.
Okay, Sean, unfortunately, there's been a rise in hate crimes when it comes to different groups, to include anti-Semitic crimes.
Yeah, and
but you've commented from that podium. This is clear. This gentleman in his jailhouse gave a statement to a reporter talking about he wishes the man were younger and he was a thug that he killed. So what do you say to this? This is clear. It's racism at its utmost.
Yeah. Two issues. Number one, I think hate crimes, anti-Semitic crimes of any nature should be called out in the most reprehensible way. There is no room for that in our country, and I think the President noted that in the joint address, that there is one issue that, despite policy, should unite us, and that is calling out hate, that is calling out divisiveness based on the color of one's skin, one's religion, one's gender. The President's been very clear on that, and he's called it out before. He's, with respect to certain particular situations, he made it very clear at the opening of his joint address. That's what he led with, is a call to denounce hate no matter where we come from politically. He's also talked about it the night that he took the stage on that Wednesday morning around 2:40 a.m. about how one of the things that he needed to do and wanted to do as president was unite all Americans. But I think that there's one other piece to this, April, that I just want to be clear on. While we unequivocally, no question about it, need to call out hate, anti-Semitism where it exists, there is another thing that we have to do. And in your case in particular, while I don't know all of the details and I don't want to reference any specific case, but I think we saw this the other day with some of the anti-Semitic behavior that was going out with respect to people of the Jewish faith, is that we saw these threats coming into Jewish community centers, and there was an immediate jump to criticize folks on the right and to denounce people on the right and ask them to condemn them. And it turns out that, in fact, it wasn't someone on the right. And it was the president from the get-go had said, I bet you it's not someone, and he was right. And yet, oh no, I understand that. And that's,
I'm saying he's a white supremacist.
I understand that, and I think in those cases, there's no question, black and white, we need to call out all instances of this. But that being said, while we're on the topic, I do think that there has been a rush to judgment in a lot of other cases when it comes to, in particular, some of the anti-Semitic discussion, where people have jumped to the conclusion about denouncing people on the right and asking for this. And in that particular case, we saw that the president was right and that this rush to judgment by a lot of folks on the left was wrong, and none of them have been held to account on that. And that is something that equally needs to be called out. When people are charging something of someone that is not true, there has been nothing to go back to those individuals. Nothing on the left who came and asked for everyone on the right to denounce something that they weren't guilty of. And I think that there needs to be an equal go back in time and call out those individuals for rushing to judgment and calling out those individuals.
My second topic, and I'm done. Someone who was in the room, you like talking about this CBC meeting that happened last week, someone who was actually in the room at that meeting said that the issue of HBCUs came up, and that's a very sensitive subject right now in the black community and here at the White House. The issue of HBCUs came up, and it's Omarosa said that she would be the one heading the HBCU office at the White House, and the president did not make a response confirming or denying. Will this be the case? Is this the case?
We don't have any announcements to make. I assume that you're referring to the executive order, and we don't have anything to announce on that subject at this time. Kristen.